This presentation is entitled Grief and the Process of Letting Go. When I was growing up in the 70s, there was a catchy phrase that you might remember, let go and let God. And we still hear many people give advice to let it go, whether that refers to letting go of a negative memory or something that makes us angry, just let it go. Or when we grieve the passing of someone we love, we might receive well-intentioned advice, you have to move on. Well, that's usually easier said than done. The kind of letting go or moving on that's done quickly without much reflection is often at the surface level. But all losses, whether they are at the end of a certain role or the death of a loved one, or even when we are facing our own mortality, all of these losses take time and self-awareness to process or to grieve. But what is grief? And how do we grieve? It has been said that grief is really love. It's all about the love I want to give but can't anymore. All of that unspent love gathers in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, in the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. We can take this a little further, though, since how that love and grief get expressed can be complex and, frankly, not fully understood by people around us or even by ourselves. Grief and the unspent love we hold, that desire to do something or to hold on to a role we had or to a relationship that is now changed because of absence or death, all of this needs to be honored and attended to. When we don't take the time for reflection and attending, the grief is usually submerged in us and erupts in any one of many emotions, behaviors, moods, and states of being. You can see here on the graphic that among the so-called stages of grieving, there are emotional outbursts, helping others, fear, depression, hope, anger. There are different emotions and states of being that might be new and unfamiliar, and perhaps even uncomfortable when we are grieving. Now, given the strangeness of it all and the unpredictability of how these states cycle through, it is easy to isolate and to keep to ourselves. Or if you're like me, you might become grumpy and critical of this, that, and the other. So it might help to turn to the life of Francis, who lived through many years of letting go. And it was rarely easy for him. For all our talk about Franciscan poverty, we rarely reflect on the resulting challenges of letting go. From the early sources, we know Francis could be curt with his brothers. When asked why he resigned from leadership of the order, and even more pointedly asked, "Is it because you don't love us anymore?" Francis said, "Son, I love the brothers as I can, but if you would follow in my footsteps, I would surely love you more and would not make you a stranger." From the early sources, we know that Francis could be curt with his brothers. When asked why he resigned from leadership of the order, and even more pointedly asked, "Is it because you don't love us anymore?" Francis said, "Son, I love the brothers as I can, but if they would follow in my footsteps, I would surely love them more and would not make myself a stranger to them." Now, he took that opportunity to reveal his grievances and his grieving even further. Quote, "Now there are some among the prelates who draw the brothers in different directions, placing before them the examples of the ancients and paying little attention to my warnings." Now, he was obviously stewing over this conversation, so later, when he was sick in bed, he raised himself up and was angry. "Who are these people? They have snatched out of my hands my way of doing things and that of the brothers. If I go to the general chapter, then I'll show them what my will is." So angry was Francis at the leaders that he cries out, "Who are these guys?" Doesn't even recognize them as friars. His anger bubbles up from disappointment that he feels in them. His anger changes into deep sadness when he is asked if he will change the leaders who abuse their power. Sobbing and feeling defeat of someone who has lost everything that he had lived for and created in his life, he said, let them live any way they want, for there is less harm in the damnation of a few than the damnation of many. Now, even that is quite a harsh statement. All of this comes from Second Chalana, remembrance of the desire of the soul. Anger, disappointment, sadness, and incredulity, these emotions are tangled up together in Francis's response to friars who do not live up to his expectations of how things should be after he let go of his own leadership role. One of my most important teachers of spiritual practice, Yvonne Rand, would repeat a single lesson of wisdom often to her classes because we needed to keep hearing it and practicing with it. She would say, judgment is the most common obstacle to presence. I'll let that sink in. Judgment is the most common obstacle to presence. Oh, it's a simple teaching, but one that is profound when we really practice with it. Do you harbor judgments? Judgments when you have let go of roles and others have taken on the work that you used to do? Do you harbor judgments about leaders or colleagues or friends? Judgment is the most common obstacle to presence. In this story of Francis, I think we see evidence of Francis working through his grief after noticing his anger rise up in him. He caught himself in his habit of judgment. There is evidence in the early sources documenting Francis's later years of him catching himself in his habits of depression, habits of doubt, habits of judgment. He would notice and then find a way to regroup, often through solitude and contemplation. Habits of behavior, including judgment, anger, frustration, sadness, loneliness, are likely to come up in our own grieving processes. He continued to work with all of his habitual responses of doubt, depression, and judgment through the rest of his life. And in so doing, he grew in his self-awareness. And through this self-awareness, he became open to the presence of Christ, increasingly. Presence of Christ within him and surrounding him. By letting go, he was aware of Christ more and more. For many years in the interior courtyard of Old Mission Santa Barbara in California, there stood a statue of St. Francis. It was probably around 10 feet tall, give or take. The figure was carved out of decaying driftwood, weathered by the salty water of the Pacific Ocean and the persistent Southern California sun. Now, I know the statue was controversial to many friars who lived there. But for me, the statue came to represent how Francis lived into his losses in a way that opened himself up more and more to Christ's love. For me, the statue displays the real meaning of the spirituality that we share in the Franciscan family. There, in the heart space of the figure, where most of the deterioration occurred, there was the only part of the statue where we could see the authentic color of the wood, redwood. In our loosening of attachments, losing and loss, and the attending grieving we enter into, we have the opportunity to discover our true self, apart from any roles or tasks. Our authentic self is laid bare for all to see, especially to ourselves. Loss is one of the experiences we all share in life. Some losses are felt as insignificant, other losses impact us deeply and for a very long time. I suspect each of you has experienced losses, both voluntary and involuntary, in your life. So I will close with a few questions for your reflection. How did the episodes of loss that you have experienced affect you initially and over time? Has there been a change in how you relate to these losses? And like the statue of St. Francis, what did these losses reveal about your authentic self? Pace e bene.